Now then, Mr. Mellish, during the match in question, did you witness any clashes between the defendant and Arnold Campbell prior to the incident in the 76th minute?
Well, there was a running fight between them for the whole of the game.
Initiated by the defendant?
Oh, really, my lord?
Mr. Logan, don't lead the witness.
I'm sorry, my lord. Who initiated this running fight?
The defendant, John Bates.
And did you have occasion to caution any player for his behaviour?
Yes, John Bates, in the 14th minute. I observed the number 3 player for Porthampton City, John Bates, strike the Fulchester United player Campbell with his arm, apparently in retaliation, and having regard to the nature of this offence, I thereupon took his name.
And will you now tell the court what occurred in the 76th minute?
Yes, certainly. I awarded a direct free kick to Fulchester on the edge of the Porthampton penalty box. As this kick was taken, both Campbell and the accused rose in the air to receive the ball. The latter leaned on Campbell, who fell to the ground, whereupon Bates kicked him. The ball was nowhere near either of them. At this juncture, I blew up. On my whistle, that is.
Quite.
And I informed Bates that I was sending him off the field.
And one final question, Mr. Mellish. I would like you to think back to the scene at that moment of the game. Please take your time. And tell the court whether in your own mind you are still quite convinced that the defendant deliberately and maliciously kicked Arnold Campbell.
That isn't necessary.
What isn't?
Oh, for me to have to think back. You must be aware that when a referee makes a decision, it's final.
Nevertheless, for the sake
It's
of
a question of authority.
Mr. Mellish, I don't think you quite understand.
Well, with respect, my lord, I think it is you that doesn't understand. You see, my position is the same as yours. I represent the legally constituted authority of the Football Association. And by virtue of that authority vested in me, it is my right, my duty, to stand by any decision I may have made.
I hear what you say, Mr. Mellish. I advise you not to try my patience any further.
I'm sure your lordship isn't expected to reconsider any of his decisions. Well, my jurisdiction's out there on the park. I don't expect to have it trespassed on either. If we don't maintain our authority, we'll all descend to anarchy, won't we?
Precisely, Mr. Mellish, and here you are under my jurisdiction. I have no power to send you off, but I can and will send you down for contempt of court unless you answer counsel's question immediately.
I judged that the defendant, Bates, kicked Campbell in a vicious, totally unprovoked attack. I see no reason for changing that opinion now.
Thank you, Mr. Mellish. I have no further questions.
Lloyd?
Mr. Mellish, according to you, there was a running fight between the accused and Campbell throughout the game, initiated, you say, by the accused.
That is correct.
Now, Mr. Bates is a defender. Is it not a defender's job to tackle and dispossess an opposing forward?
Yes.
Then surely it was perfectly natural for Mr. Bates to initiate all such contact between them.
It looked at like that, yes.
And of all the occasions he made contact, is it not true to say that 9 times out of 10 this contact was quite fair and within the rules of football?
Agreed. But what about those other times?
Well, being fair about the matter, and I'm sure you're trying to be and thinking about it, would you not agree that on those other occasions it was invariably a case of my client retaliating against foul play by Campbell, against the illegal use of his elbow to shield the ball, for instance? That's what happened in the 14th minute, isn't it?
Yes, more or less. Must admit it's very difficult to tell in these cases. But, of course, retaliation is a punishable offence in any case.
Without question, but you will agree that there is a vast difference between that and what my learned friend has chosen to call a campaign of brutal aggression.
Yes, I suppose there is a difference.
Do you wear glasses to drive, Mr. Mellish?
Yes, I do.
I'm sorry to have to put this to you. I'm sure you understand it is my duty. You don't wear glasses to referee, do you?
No. But the two things aren't the same at all. I mean, when you're on the pitch, you don't have to look for detail. You've got 2 linesmen to help you. And a player is a sight larger than the number plates on a motor car.
But their hands and their feet are not.
I am aware of that. And I point out that both the fouls committed by Bates occur within 15 yards of me, no more.
Yes. Now, before moving on to the second of those incidents, there's another little point I'd like to take up with you. Are you aware of the expression homer?
Yes.
Will you tell the court its meaning?
Well, it refers to a referee who tends to favour the home side in his decisions.
Now, do you remember writing these words in the Football Digest in May of last year? That's Exhibit 5, my lord. Intimidation is the cancer of today's game. In some areas, violence among spectators has reached such proportions that even the best referee might hesitate before awarding, say, a penalty against the home team for fear of what could happen to him afterwards.
Yes, well, I was rather thinking more of the Latin American countries when I wrote that.
But nevertheless, it's correct, isn't it, that during the game on December the 15th, a great deal of hostility was generated by certain sections of the crowd against the Porthampton team, and in particular against Bates, and against any decision that you made in their favour.
That did not deter me from doing my duty. And I would point out to you that after the match, it was a certain element of the Porthampton supporters that threatened me. Yeah, so much so, in fact, that Mr. Harris, the Fulchester chairman, took it upon himself to escort me from the ground personally in his car.
Did he indeed? And I want to turn to the incident in the 76th minute for which my client is on trial today. When the free kick was taken, where were you standing?
Oh, well, I was in a direct line with the Porthampton defensive wall.
Why there?
Well, in a dead ball situation such as this, the referee's most difficult job is to get the defenders to retire the required 10 yards.
And I imagine you also kept an eye on the ball itself.
Well, of course, you've got to know when the kick's coming.
Are you saying, then, that with one eye on the Porthampton defensive line and the other on the ball, you were able to see clearly something that happened a good few yards behind the Porthampton wall?
I could, yes, out of the corner of my eye.
The corner of your eye, Mr. Mellish, but how could you? You've already told us that a referee doesn't look for detail.
I saw what happened.
Did you consult either of the two linesmen that are there to help you?
Since I was in no doubt, that wasn't necessary. If they'd had anything to tell me, they could have done so. No, you can't get round the truth. Bates kicked his man.
Do you ever make a mistake, Mr. Mellish?
Yes, I do. And when I do, I admit it immediately. It doesn't take me 6 months to recognise the fact.
Well, I'm not doubting your sincerity. I just wonder how you can stand there and be so sure. Let me ask you something. When I stood up to begin this cross-examination, I wiped my hands on my handkerchief. Now, do you remember from which pocket I took that handkerchief?
Well, no, I can't be certain. I think it was the right.
Well, you've made a mistake there, Mr. Mellish, because I took out no handkerchief at all.
Oh, my lord, this type of cheap ploy can only confuse the jury. We're not taking part in an American television melodrama.
My lord, it's very simple. I merely wanted to demonstrate that when a person's eyes and concentration are distracted elsewhere, they tend to see what they subconsciously wish to see, or what they think they must have seen, rather than what they have in reality seen.
Yes, Mr. Lloyd, I do take the point. Members of the jury, when you consider the evidence, I advise you to treat counsel's demonstration with very great caution. A handkerchief or no handkerchief in a courtroom is not at all the same thing as a kick or no kick on a soccer field. Carry on, Mr. Lloyd.
I have no further questions, my lord.
You may stand down, Mr. Mellish.
I call Kevin Wilson Lewis. You are Kevin Wilson Lewis, and your address is 17 Meadow Lane, Fulchester?
Yeah.
And is it right that you're employed by Fulchester United Football Club, for whom you played in the match against Porthampton City on December the 15th last?
Yeah.
And what is your normal position on the field, Mr. Lewis?
Well, I got a number 9 shirt. I'm a striker.
And as such, you played in close proximity to your fellow forward, Mr. Campbell?
Yeah, we linked up a lot.
How many times have you and he played together against the accused?
Counting a couple in the league, I'd say at least 6 times, all in the last couple of seasons.
Yes, would you say that they had a sporting, amicable relationship during that time?
Sporting. They loathed each other's guts.
My lord, that question calls for conjecture on the part of the witness.
Well, then, for my learned friend's benefit, I will rephrase it. Mr. Lewis, what did you observe about their attitudes towards each other?
Well, it's known, isn't it? First time they was ever up against each other, Arnie played him right off the park. Showed him the ball, and went through him like a knife through butter, as if he weren't there. Trouble was, with Arnie being just a beginner like, and Batesy an old pro, went to Arnie's head. He started telling everybody Batesy was over the hill, all washed up. So natural, every time after that, when they played, Batesy tried to flatten him.
And this was the state of affairs when they met on December the 15th?
Right. They got off to a bad start in the first couple of minutes. And then when Arnie did a nutmeg on him, whoa, beautiful to see that was.
A nutmeg?
Meaning to push the ball through your opponent's legs, Mr. Logan.
Yeah, there you go, Your Honour. What's your club?
Chelsea, as it happens.
Oh, well, there's no accounting for taste, is there?
Shall we get on, Mr. Logan?
I'm indebted to your lordship for your expertise. Tell us how the match progressed, Mr. Lewis.
Well, as we was going off at half-time, I said to Bates, see you in the second half, Fanny. Joking like. And he said, I'll see the lot of you in hospital first.
I'll see the lot of you in hospital first. Now, you're quite sure of that?
That's what Fanny said, yeah.
Yes, please refer to the defendant as Bates, Mr. Lewis, not Fanny.
Well, it's Arnie's name for him, really. Seeing as how he's not much of a one for the ladies, unlike our Arnie. No offence intended, of course.
Now, let's move on to the free kick your team was awarded in the 76th minute. Where were you standing for it?
Well, as planned, about 5 yards behind Arnie, waiting for him to lay it off to me when it came over.
When what came over?
For the ball, of course.
And did it?
No, but Bates got up in the air alongside Arnie and leaned on him good and hard. Then when he hit the deck, he kicked him.
How many times?
Just once on the hip. Then he went off. I went over to see how Arnie was. Soon after that, the whistle went.
And did you see the whole incident clearly?
Yeah, I was right behind him.
And you have no doubt that what happened was a deliberate foul?
None at all. The ball was miles away.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis.
No, don't go away, Mr. Lewis. I've got one or two questions to ask you. Why are you testifying here today?
Well, I was asked to.
That's the only reason?
Yeah.
You'd have really preferred not to have come, would you?
Well, I don't know.
Did you come here reluctantly?
Well, I'd rather this thing was kept inside football and not coming out all in the open like, you know?
Unfortunately, the truth has a habit of coming out. Tell me, in your opinion, is my client, John Bates, a dirty player?
Batesy, one of the best in the English league.
Why do you say that?
Well, they got some right bastards up in Scotland, ain't they?
Very amusing. But I suggest to you that while Mr. Bates may be a hard player, even a rough player, he is not and never has been a dirty player. Now, please think carefully about this before you answer. Have you ever known Bates to deliberately injure an opponent who did not have the ball? And please remember, you are under oath.
No, I never seen him do anything like that. Well, not before December, anyway.
Now, when this incident happened, you saw it all perfectly plainly.
Look, I've already told you.
You told my learned friend. I'd like to get one thing very clear. At the time, was there, apart from the defendant, any other Porthampton City player in the vicinity of Mr. Campbell who might have been responsible for that injury?
No.
Oh, really, my lord, what can be the point of these, if I may say so, rather laboured attempts to establish for the prosecution's benefit what has already been established once? If my learned friend is hoping to show that Mr. Campbell's injury was a self-inflicted accident, then he should tell us. Unless, of course, he's suggesting that it was caused by Mr. Lewis, his own teammate.
I'm grateful to my learned friend for his assistance. That is exactly what I intend to prove.
The case of the Queen against Bates will be resumed tomorrow in the Crown Court.